Hi, everyone. It's Lynn from DevineCentral, and I am back with Claire Lilly. And Claire is a professional tarot reader. She is also the creator of a children's deck, and it's called Aunt Lily's Tarot. And it's for children, and it's a really cute story. I'm going to have her tell you about it in a moment. She is also the author of Tarot and Me, which is a fabulous journal for people who really need help of pulling it all together and keeping it in one place. And so I'm really happy that you're here today, Claire. It's so nice to see you.
You, Lynn. Thank you for inviting me.
I have this deck and I am of yours, and I am really happy that you're part of my Tarot and Kids group. You know, this isn't the first time you and I have recorded something because you're used to doing fairs and festivals. You did an interview for me on my fairs and festivals series as well. What I like about your deck, and this isn't a baby deck. This isn't like a Hello Kitty deck. I mean, this is more for a tweener and a teener. And I love it because you come with all these different cards with stuff, and you give like a how to get started and some spreads, how to do that. To give you an idea, to give the people an idea of your deck, I wanted to pull a couple of cards to show them what they look like. And I'll tell you the Chariot, which is a tough card for adults, to understand. I love this because the kids can understand being pulled along by the dogs, right? And then you have my favorite card in the whole deck, which is Strength. And I mean, that is just too sweet, that's just such a powerful card. And then the Hermit, so not scary, it's like grandma, it's so, but it's just a wonderful deck, and I'm so happy that you put it out there. So why don't you tell me how you initially got started doing this deck?
You've picked two of my cards I was going to talk about anyway, so with wavelength. Um, it all started around the COVID time. I was reading for people over email. So I was doing a lot of email readings. And my father-in-law wasn't very well, so we used to go from where we are now in Illinois up to Rapid City, where my husband's family are from. And I took my cards with me. I took different decks. And I read for people over the internet. So one day, my husband's niece, Piper, came up and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Can I have a look at the cards?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course, have a look at them." And she was, "What does this mean? What does that mean?" And I said, "What do you think it means?" And then this sort of evolved over a couple of weeks. And then she would say, "Can I pull a card for Grandpa?" And I remember one was like the Four of Swords. And I said, "Perhaps he needs some rest today." "Okay, I won't disturb him." And then it was, "Can I pull a card for my brother? Can I pull a card for, what does this mean?" Anyway, after 2 weeks, we were coming back to Illinois, and she said, "Can I have a deck?" And I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll find you one because you're interested." And Mum was okay with that. And bearing in mind that Piper was 11. So I came back down to Illinois. I thought I'll find her a deck. And I could only find Hello Kitty, really, for young kids, which is fine, or decks which had too many sort of adult, the star was a naked woman, the tower looked pretty yucky.
Testicles on just about all of them.
Exactly. And I'm like, this isn't right for an 11-year-old. Interestingly, my mum had passed away the year before, and she was sort of into the astrology and things like that. And I had a little bit of money. And I said to Piper, "You know what? I can't find you a deck out there. I can't find you one. However, why don't we make one?" I said, "We'll have to have some rules in there, but why don't we make one?" And we did. That's how it started. We had little Zoom calls like this, and it's like, I want my family in there. I said, "Okay, well, let's see. What are you? You're an Aries, so you should be the Page of Wands." And she played softball, so she is the softball player. Her twin sister wanted to be upside down. Another niece and she still is actually a cheerleader, and does dance, so she was the fool. and my dog Lady's in the fall. And it just became a family project, really. I wanted to have color codes for the minors, so it was easy to read. So if you've got all green, that's all sort of pentacles.
Yes.
Yeah. The major cards have a grey at the bottom in writing, and the minor have yellow. Just wanted to be a fun deck, and it was literally going to be a family thing. And I'm in different tarot groups, and I started talking about it just generally, and people said, "Oh, can I buy the deck? Can I buy the deck?" And I'm like, "Okay, this has gathered more momentum than I expected." So
I remember when you got on Kickstarter, right? You put it on Kickstarter, and I remember in our Vince Patici gatherings, that's where I first saw the deck. That's where I first met you, and you know, you were. It's like people were jumping on left and right, you know, and all of Vince's followers were jumping on to, you know, to contribute to Kickstarter, and you made your goal.
please, like, what, as I say, it wasn't ever an intention to release the deck as a deck. It's now in every continent except Antarctica, which is
Congratulations. That's big. That's huge.
it is. Um,
So how did the 11-year-old niece like the end product?
she loved the fact that it was easy to navigate. She loved
Yeah.
the fact, of course, you know, being I think then 12 when it actually came out. It was exciting, and I gave a copy to everybody and everything, you know. But it was also part of the rules that we wanted was I wanted it to be inclusive, because even back then you didn't see many decks that included people of color, people with disabilities.
Deck is very diversified,
Yes.
you know, which is, but it's done so in a really tasteful way. So I really liked that. Even, you know, even bringing in the, you know, the strength card, the sick child, you know, and so you have a lot of, you know, there's a lot of kindness in the deck, you know, but that's kind of your personality, so I'm not surprised.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
so let me ask you, you've had a chance to work with your niece on this, and again, she's 11.
You are.
Do you see, have you had a chance to work with other children, or have you seen other kids working with this deck, or heard from parents
Oh,
um, on this? And I'm just wondering how the tweeners and the teens differ from how you might expose like a younger child, or how you might, I don't know, how you might expose a younger child to that. Like I'm working in this series with a just turned 8-year-old who's, you know, going on 30, but but you know what I'm saying? It's like I just think that even as adults, we don't know anything about the cards when we start. And
no.
so I think, you know, we all need to start by learning the cards, but is there any better way than just rote memorization, you know, not rote memorization, but I mean, you obviously have to include a little bit more imagination and a little bit more um yeah, just the intuitive stuff. Let the kids just go, you know, and let the meaning of the cards be whatever they want them to be, you
And
know.
that's exactly what I wanted to, you know, the Aunt Lily's tarot deck. And actually, that's how my book came about too, because it's like learning. I always think of tarot as like learning a language. Or if I asked 100 people to draw a tree, I'd have 100 trees, but they'd all be slightly different. Some would be in the spring, the winter, the fall, the summer, but they're all basic trees. So for me, learning tarot is you have your basic information, but then it's what you see. It's down to other cards, it's down to the reading, it's down to the intuitive hits, it's down to conversation with your client. So if you're talking from that level. But for kids, I think from up to say the age of 11, 12, imagery. It's all about color, it's all about what they see. I've had kids come up to me and see things I never saw in my own cards. Right? That to me is the magic of tarot. They see things that their subconscious is bringing forward to help them or to navigate the situation. When it comes to 11, 12, 13, 14, we're talking relationships, a little bit more having to do essays for school, things like that. They're more question bound on what do they mean, almost learning the cards. Whereas I think the younger ones are more about imagery and playing and playmaking. it's all got its place. It's all got its place.
Time they hit their teen years, they've been in school long enough. They had to learn how to they had to learn how to read. They had to learn how to do math. They've had to learn how to write in cursive. Well, maybe not today anymore, but they've had to learn how to learn. And so I think that, don't you think that the teenagers, I'm talking like like the 11 to 15-year-old, I think their approach to learning is different than that of a 5 to 8-year-old.
If they've got an interest, like with any kid and even any adult, if you've got an interest, it's easier. But the attention span is different. It depends what they want out of it. If someone just wants to play with cards and stuff because they've got nothing else to do, that's fine. And you get the teens will, I feel they want to learn more. Like, how do I read them? What does it really mean? Because that's what Piper kept saying to me, is what does that mean? What does that mean? Whereas I do want to say, well, this card means this. What do you think it means? And it's pushing it back. It's just different ways of learning. And obviously there are learning differences. People are visual. I write things down. I'm an old-fashioned writer. People need to have audio, and YouTube's great for watching. So there's different ways of learning.
Right.
People
That's true.
learn.
You know, I'm seeing more and more high school aged kids come up to us at, at the festivals and stuff. I'm just seeing a lot more of them showing an interest, and I'm sure a lot of it had to do with COVID. They were stuck inside, they were watching videos, and these videos would come up on their feed, and they get interested and start watching and all that. But there's so many more, now than there were. And honestly, I think some of the quieter, more, introverted kids discovered that once they learned tarot, all of a sudden they had new friends. They had people that were curious about them. And, what a way it kind of reminds me like of a, 14-year-old boy that learns how to dance, when he goes to the junior high dances, it's like he's popular with all the girls. He could be a real uggo and it wouldn't matter because he can dance or he can play the guitar, right? It's like, it's having a skill that it draws people to you because because this one is such an interesting skill. One of the things working with Annabelle, it got me thinking about when I grew up. My siblings are 8, 9, and 13 years younger. And so I really didn't, I kind of grew up an only child because by the time I was, 8, 9, 10 years old, I mean, they were still in, like diapers practically. So I was kind of alone. We lived out on an acreage, so I didn't have friends close by. And I had what I remember when I was young, from 5 to like 9 years old, I had a lot of imaginary friends. And I used to love to sit them, all of my stuffed animals and everybody down in the basement in a room in a half circle, and I would teach them stuff. And God, it's embarrassing, but I talked to them all the time. And now, after I got involved in tarot, and then even more so when I started working with Annabelle, I realized, I don't think these were imaginary friends. I think these were my spirit guides that have been with me all this time. And I was, kind of a lonely child back then just because I didn't have anyone to, I was so, I don't know, I was so type A, but yet I was so alone. I didn't have anybody. So I think they just came to keep me company. And they've
Yes.
been with me this whole time. I'm sure of it. I'm convinced that when you see a child out there that's talking to somebody, it's like, you know, stand back because it may be a real phenomenon for them, so
Oh,
interesting.
issue. They you it's a lot more accepted as well nowadays.
It is
It's a lot more,
for all age groups.
yes.
So, in working with Annabelle, and these episodes are coming up, as you know, we've talked about this, and I started out by just having her take a deck and flip over a card. Your suggestion was to have her, and this is going to be the next episode. Is I just wanted her to make 2 piles, as you suggested, one for cards she liked and one for cards that maybe she didn't like as much, and try to tell me why. And it's fascinating to watch her do that. But then the next episode, which we just filmed, is about her storytelling. And I'm trying to develop. It's like, here's what the cards mean. Now tell me the story, because she just learned what they meant, so they were fresh in her mind. And she was so willing and able to do that. But to, you know, it's one of the things I'm finding is more difficult is trying to help her help take her from this is what this card means to how to apply it to a situation. So for example, our one of our favorite cards, or like, oh, let's just take the top one. Let's just take the chariot, It's like if this is the advice, right? This is the last card in the row for her. It's like, well, this happened and then my friend did this and then but what's this card mean? Well, she took her dogs for a walk. That was the end. So trying to say to her, so maybe your friend needed to walk away from that situation, or maybe it's a lot of it is influence. It's a lot of it, and I sensed and I felt like I was giving a lot of influence in these sessions with her, but she's 8. So trying to I think it's just gonna be some time, don't you?
And
Yeah.
for you to help her gives her brain cells some little connections, because
Right.
she doesn't know what they mean, and not necessarily at 8 years old, and depending on the child, they don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah.
And that's the thing to try.
And that's teaching them that there is no right or wrong.
There's no right or wrong. What I tend to say to people is, what's the first thing you think of? Even if it feels or sounds a bit odd.
Yeah.
Typically correct. I mean, I've done readings with people, and I'm like, nah, that's not wrong. And then after the reading, I've gone back and said, I had this thought. And then, oh, yeah, that's right. And I'm like, I should have gone with the gut feeling, the intuition.
Right.
Giving in confidence to do that, giving the kids confidence to say it, even if it sounds weird or whatever, because 9 times out of 10, it isn't.
A couple of days ago, visiting with Annabelle's mother, I learned that she and her friends had picked up tarot in high school and had an interest in high school. Now, I have not had a chance to sit down and talk with her about how tarot came into her home now. I don't know if Annabelle saw it elsewhere. I don't know if her mom decided to start playing with it again. And Annabelle, I'll find out. In fact, I'm thinking about closing up this whole series with an interview with her to find out a bunch of stuff. But she said to me, and this is what prompted me to get going on this series. She said to me a while back, we just bought a deck, and because she goes, oh my God, you're a tarot reader. We just bought this deck, and she said we sat down and we went through the little white book and we looked at what the meanings were, and then we laid the cards out, but we couldn't figure out how to read them. And that's what prompted me to say, okay, I've had this idea on the back burner for a while. It's time to get going. And it's really kind of interesting. But yeah, trying to it's not just about an 8-year-old daughter. It's about an 8-year-old in my mind. It's about a child and a parent learning it together, the ones that don't have it in the home. So what I did, I just finished my little white book, kid-friendly edition, and I put it up on Etsy, and I'll put the information down below, and I'll have to send you a copy now. But it's finally up and done, and I tried to come up with 78 different scenarios of what the card could mean in. And it's probably designed more for, 11 and under, 12 and under. But I mean, I think, I think it would help an adult, but it would help an adult explain it to the kid. And in doing so, they learn together.
Exactly.
And so this is going to be kind of fun watching this mother-daughter team learn, together.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's great. What were some of the challenges that you had putting this deck together?
It wasn't a challenge as in, oh, just thought of an idea, let's put it together and be done. It was, the pressure was off because it wasn't ever going to publish.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I was quite lucky. But when it started to get this momentum, I'm like, well, I can't draw. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. So how am I going to get the images onto card? And it's funny you picked up the Chariot, because I decided to go and find a couple of designers, and I asked them. In my head, I had a girl on a skateboard being pulled by two dogs, and I sent that description out to three people, and the person who I chose, that card has not been altered. She did it from my design. I love the fact that she put the railroad crossing behind, because to me the Chariot is, once you've made the decision from the lovers, you go forward, you don't go backwards. So it's like the barrier.
It's in the back, yeah.
And she's been pulled by two dogs up a road, Chariot road. Again, I was trying to make it more modern. So that actually was quite easy. There were a couple of cards I struggled with. The Hierophant was one, and the Hierophant in the previous
Excuse
book,
me.
as we know, the tarot has been around since the mid 1400s.
Yep.
And religion has waned a little bit since those days, and a lot of people don't go to church anymore. So where do they get their advice from? Well, back in the COVID days, we had a lot of speakers, a lot of protests, if we remember. And what the speakers were people giving advice, or then imparting their knowledge on the topic. So what I did, I wanted it to be a speaker on the, I don't know why, but is it the 7 steps in Rome? I can't remember now, but the steps in Rome, and he's got a horn to shout through, and to let people, a megaphone to talk to people, and he's got an audience. So I wanted that to be relevant.
And I was looking here for the Hierophant card, because it's a tough card for all of us. But yeah.
Yeah, I wanted all the whole deck to be friendly and kind.
Yeah.
And like with the Hierophant, he's a teacher, he's a speaker, he's a preacher. And I felt that gave that element to it.
I agree. It turned out great. And I just noticed he's holding a book in front of him as he's speaking. So it's like he's reading from a book. So he's knowledgeable, and knows where to find the information. See, what I see in that card is, if you don't have it, you know where to find it. You turn to him to find the information. Yeah, it's brilliant. Tell us you got to tell me what the thought was behind this card. I mean, what was the thought process? What prompted this to be the card?
My head from day one. Couple of things. I've been personally through breast cancer. My mother-in-law has been through breast cancer. My father-in-law died of leukemia. And when it comes to children, I remember seeing like St. Jude adverts on TV, and
strings, they do a good job.
It's that strength that these kids have got. You see the kids smiling in the bed.
Yeah.
And they're keeping their parents going by smiling.
Yes. It's amazing.
Isn't it? And
yeah, it really is.
They're the beacon, the amazing strength they have to go through. And I didn't want them to be a sort of on the floor in a puddle. I wanted them on the floor cuddling this great big lion. Like, who wouldn't want that big stuffed animal to cuddle and to be protective and have all that goodness? Because also I wanted to include children with cancer. I wanted to include children who are disabled, because they can't play like other children, and they get left out sometimes. So if you've got somebody in that card deck who's going through something like that, it brings them a little bit of, brings them in.
And that brings up, what can children learn from tarot? Because so many parents are like, ooh, it's voodoo. And one of the things, to me, one of the things I think is most important is empathy. It teaches them empathy, because you have to share the news. If tarot is about telling a story, it's about telling a story in a kind and caring way, because you can tell a story, you can tell a scary story, or you can tell a kind story, and you have to decide which one are you going to tell your friend, and being kind to that friend and not giving your friend, bad, really bad news. When they get to be a teenager, they can start working on bad news stuff. But for the tender age kids, it's keeping it all it is. I'm trying to figure out a way, and I'm going to do a video if I ever figure it out. I'm trying to figure out a way of teaching them how to take that card and turn it into into an action,
Right.
but at their age level, at their understanding level. It's like, how can, what does this mean? I mean, yes, it's a child who might have to go into the hospital, but or it might, but what might it say? Might it say you might get sick?
Maybe. Or
It might say, yeah, but I want to lean it more toward, you might have to be strong today. See, and that's what I did in my little white book for kids,
yeah.
is I gave those kinds of examples for people. So what have you had any, and I don't want to say revelations, but have you had any interesting things happen since this deck went viral? Have you had, I mean, whether it's been notes from kids or from parents or colleagues, or yeah, I mean, anything exciting that has happened since?
A couple of things. Going back to that strength card, I had a parent reach out to me and she said, I love your deck. That strength card is exactly what I wanted to see, because her daughter was going through a lot of cancer treatments, and she felt that her daughter was included. So I actually got the raw file of the image and I put it on a poster.
Oh, that's nice.
And
Gave
she
her a
was
poster of it.
in the hospital, like,
Yeah.
you are that lion.
I bet that drew a few people into her room, doctors and nurses, and everybody probably loved that poster.
Um, tarot as a name, maybe, but there are variants to people thinking the tarot is evil, it's bad juju, which it isn't. It's
Yeah.
images of cards.
It's education, it's not being educated, in it. And or I do that, at every festival. I do that at every psychic fair I go to. I'm educating somebody about tarot, because they're afraid of it. They're afraid of what they don't know. And and this is why we liked Vincent Petici so much, because he took the spiritual aspect right out of it, threw it out the window, and said, this is a 1950s psychological game that was created to, I mean, not tarot, but the concept of conceptual blending. He took the spirit right out of it and made it human, so that people could relate. So about people about the parents that are afraid, or the parents that are apprehensive, or they cringe at the thought of their kids getting involved. And what advice or what encouragement do you have for parents that are all of a sudden faced with a tender age child who may have been, I don't know, it may have been subjected to tarot, and now is asking about it, and wanting a deck, or wanting, to look at this. What do you say to them?
Lot that can help with the whole situation. So number one, the tarot itself, depending on how you're brought up, if somebody is religious and will not have it and entertain it in the house, and there's what can you do and say. However, you are interested, and if a kid is interested, to me, I've never had kids, but I have two stepdaughters.
Yeah.
And to show an interest in anything that you can learn with the child, you grow a bond together. It means communication can be easier. The Rorschach psychological cards, I think the psychologists use them for kids, like the ink blot. What do you see in this picture?
Yeah, I mean, look at special victims units that take children that have been abused psychologically or sexually or otherwise. and, they give them dolls, and then it's kind of the same thing. I mean, if you think about it, the kids that are having problems, and, in school or whatever, they're afraid to talk, or they don't know how to talk about it, could use the cards for that. It'd be a
Oh,
great way for a parent,
oh,
if that parent gets on, but that parent can't just come in and set a deck down and say, "You've been acting strange lately. Pick out the card in this deck that you." I mean, you have to develop that bond over time, so the kid can trust that you and they share this deck. Yeah.
and it's like using a medium. So especially when I was growing up, if someone said, right, what's wrong with you today, Claire? Well, I would be back and wall up, and I'm not going to talk to anybody, right? Because I don't want to get embarrassed. I don't know what to say. I don't know how they'll react. So going back from my own experience, if I had a set of cards, I could perhaps pull a card and say, that's what you almost take there's almost a barrier in between, but a good barrier. If a parent knows, so for example, I actually wrote something down on that, it takes, as I said here, it takes the pressure off asking a direct question.
Yeah.
They use this medium. So you could say, for example, if the parent's also involved in tarot, you know, you can sense if the child's or there's something not right. You as a parent intuitively know. So
Sure.
you could, you know, 3 cards. Let's pick the 5 of Swords. Let's pick the Ace of Cups and the Knight of Wands just to do it. So what type of day did you have? And they could just point.
Yeah.
The 5 of Swords could be a bit of an argument with a friend, or, was their lunch money taken?
Right.
The Ace of Cups could be, I'm learning a new topic in science. I'm really enjoying it. And the Knight of Wands could be, oh, we did sport all day.
Yeah.
To use that as an opening question, it's like, okay, so you got the Ace of Cups, so you what are you learning today? Oh, I've learned something in chemistry or whatever.
Yeah.
You got the 5 of Swords. What happened? Well, me and my friend had an argument. Well, what happened then? And it just takes that directness away.
That's great.
Even
Yeah.
if they choose more cards to go, that's how I felt. That's how I felt.
So, the deck, and I love your journal. Oh my God. And the cover on that, I don't know where you came up with that, is gorgeous.
Oh,
You have, yeah, it's an amazing book. I really like it.
thank you.
Um, and there's a lot of stuff in it. I mean, you help people. It's not just a bunch of blank pages. You have stuff that helps people in there. Now they can find both the deck and the book on your website, which is clairelilly.com. And I'm going to put that down below so that they can, in fact, I'm going to put both pages down below so they can go direct, they can either go to your website or they can go directly to those pages, too, if they would like to purchase that. Now, I'm going to throw something here at you that I was thinking about before we got on this morning. I know how you love that when I do that to you. Um, I was thinking about, if you agreed, I would love to do a flip through of this deck, of your Aunt Lily's deck. I thought it might be because everybody does flip throughs, right? Everybody does reviews and flip throughs and everything. But I was thinking, who's done a flip through with a creator? You know? And I thought, that after I'm done with this series, like in a couple of weeks or something, I thought maybe we could get back together and do a flip through where, we don't talk about every single card, because it would take forever, but, maybe where you could share on, maybe, a dozen or so cards about, what was behind this card or whatever, because I thought that might be really interesting. Are you up for that? Are you game?
That would be wonderful.
Great.
Yes.
Of advice, because I'll tell you, this series is just as much about parents. It's actually almost more for parents than it is for kids, because I'm trying to help the parents help the kids, with the tarot. But any last advice?
Embracing something like the tarot, which it had its fortune telling background, which it was film. It gives another connection with parent and child. I feel that it takes people away from the video games, TV. Do you remember the time when your parents used to take you out and you were bored in the car and you didn't have anything to do? You didn't have a mobile phone. You didn't have any of that. But what you were allowed was to go inside yourself. And I think that's what we need to bring back. And to be able to do that, rest, look at a card, what do I feel? How is that speaking to me today? I think it just adds another level, bringing empathy into it, intuition into it. I've heard that one high school teacher teaches an after school club with tarot and astrology and all the other bits and pieces. And he has used the cards to help people write an English essay because people get stuck with the imagination.
Right.
So I think it's multifaceted, and you may come up, and the parents may come up with other things that are used with tarot.
Yeah.
But what people got to remember is it's imagery on cards. Go with the imagery you want for your child, and just explore.
That's
And I
great.
think it's wonderful that tarot has come away from that fortune telling background.
Right.
And it can be used to help, and that's one reason I created it, is to help other people.
That's terrific. Thank you, Claire. I really appreciate you being here, and can hardly wait to, include you in this series and see where it takes us. So I will be back to you with for a flip through of your deck. I think that would be a lot of fun to put that out there. All righty then. Thanks, folks. I have all the information down below, and you can also find information on my little white book for kids friendly edition. And that might help you through this journey, as I'm sure that Claire's little white book will as well. All right, then we'll see you later. Bye-bye.